Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we're going to discuss how the FA Cup results have affected FPL, when the blanks and doubles are for the remainder of the season, which teams will be blanking and doubling, and also the best time to play your remaining chips. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, I have no idea how long this video is going to be, probably quite a long one because there is so much to cover. I highly recommend that you watch the whole video rather than skipping to a specific section because it's going to follow, hopefully, a cohesive narrative explaining how each step works. However, if there is just one specific thing you want to look at, like the assistant manager chip, there will be timestamps and chapters down below as always. So hopefully that is helpful. And if you do get some use out of today's video, please do subscribe as well. The most important thing though is a massive thank you to Ben and James. So if you don't know how we all have such incredible knowledge around the upcoming blanks and doubles and when to play the chips, obviously there is some opinion here, but it is largely thanks to the fantastic work from Ben Crellin and James from Planet FPL. Lots of people seem to just magically come up with all of this information and don't cite the two of them. Without them, most of us would have absolutely no idea. And I will hold my hands up and say, without these two people, I would have no idea what's happening in FPL in terms of blanks and doubles. So a massive shout out to them. Please go and thank them. Please go and follow them on social media. And also on the day of me uploading this on Tuesday, I believe James from Planet FPL is going to be uploading a podcast going through the chips and the upcoming schedule in a lot more detail than even I will in this video. And James is far more knowledgeable than I am. So after watching this video, go check out that podcast and I myself will be watching and listening as well. And if he gives any information that I don't cover today, then I'll cover that throughout the week as well. But I just wanted to start by saying a massive thank you to Ben and to James. So I was trying to think about the best place to start this video in terms of explaining when the blanks and doubles will be and why we're predicting the teams that we are. And I think the best place to start is probably with the FA Cup quarter-final draw. The reason for that is basically all of the blanks and doubles for the remainder of the season that we're currently a little bit unknown on all hinge on which teams make the FA Cup semi-final. The reason for that is the FA Cup semi-finals are played during Game Week 34. So therefore, the teams that reach the FA Cup semi-finals cannot play on the weekend that other teams do on Game Week 34, which will cause that blank to happen. And obviously, the team that they play against that week will also go on to blank. What that essentially means is we are going to have between 6 and 8 teams blanking in Game Week 34, we think. Now, the reason this gets a little bit dicey is the Premier League have shown this season that they can, and potentially will, reschedule games in the Premier League to be played at the same time as games in Europe, so in the UCL and the Europa League. Why that's important is technically some of the games that would be postponed from Game Week 34 due to the FA Cup semi-finals could technically be rescheduled for the midweek of Game Week 34, which is European football. So as you can see at the bottom, this is taken directly from Ben Crellin. Game Week 34 postponements are very likely to move to a double game week, but it is possible that they will move to a midweek in Game Week 34 if both sides are out of Europe. So there is this possibility. Let's go on the notion, though, that the teams that reach the semi-final and the teams they're playing against in that week will blank. So let's assume that Game Week 34 will be a blank. But again, we need to wait for that announcement to be 100% sure. And obviously, if any of the teams are in Europe, then they, of course, can't be rescheduled for the midweek and therefore will have to blank in Game Week 34. Hopefully that makes sense. So essentially, whichever of these teams make it to the semi-final and therefore beat their opponent as per this list, then they'll have a blank in 34. So we've got Preston versus Aston Villa. Obviously, Aston Villa are massive favourites there. Bournemouth versus City. City are probably marginal favourites, but Bournemouth haven't been much worse of a team this season. And based on current form, I think that's a difficult one to predict. But yeah, at the moment, City are the favourites. Brighton versus Forest. If you're looking at bookies odds at the moment, Brighton are the favourites just about, probably due to it being a home fixture. And then Fulham Palace looks very, very even. We've recently seen Palace beat Fulham at Craven Cottage. So we'll have to see how that goes. But at the moment, Fulham are still favourites, again, due to it being at home. A lot of these games aren't easy to predict, though. Other than Preston Villa, and by the way, Preston could definitely win that game, they're not easy games to predict at all. They're very, very close. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of which teams could possibly be blanking in 34. I'm actually going to clear that up even more in the next section, and I'll show you exactly which teams we're expecting to therefore blank in 34 and obviously play. Those teams that do blank in 34, which we'll explain in a second, we are expecting those fixtures, those blank games, to go into double Game Week 33. So to essentially be shifted 1 week earlier. What that would then cause, and we will look at an entire timeline a bit later, but what that would cause is a double Game Week 33 for the teams that blank in Game Week 34. So the teams that double in 33 will be also the teams that blank in 34, which explains why it is so difficult to deal with double 33 and blank 34 without chips, because the teams that you'd want to load up on for 33 are the very teams that you wouldn't want in your team for Game Week 34. Hopefully that makes sense for that first section. Now let's take a little bit more of an in-depth look at Game Week 34. So I've tried to separate Game Week 34 into 3 sections. The teams that we know for a fact will have a fixture in 34 and therefore will definitely not be doubling in 33. The teams that are predicted to play in Game Week 34 as things stand based on the favourites for the FA Cup quarterfinals, and then as a result the teams that are predicted to blank. So as you can see right now, we have 4 fixtures and 8 teams that have a guaranteed fixture in Game Week 34. We are expecting 6 further teams and 3 further fixtures to be going ahead, which would leave us with 6 teams blanking in 34, and those 6 teams that blank in 34 would be the 6 teams that double in Game Week 33. Of course, again, on the caveat that they could potentially, if neither of the teams are in Europe, rearrange those games for the midweek of Game Week 34. So hopefully that makes sense so far. So the 8 teams that are going to play in 34, and therefore if you want to start thinking about, it's a little bit early, but if you want to start thinking about making sure that you've got players for what is likely to be the biggest blank game week of the season, here are the teams that will have a fixture. Firstly, Newcastle and Ipswich. The reason that's important is Newcastle double in 32. We thought they might then double in 33, but they are now not going to double in 33, right? Because Ipswich and Newcastle were both knocked out the FA Cup. So Newcastle will double in 32, have a fixture in 33, but also have a fixture in 34. So that means no blanks for them, which is quite useful if you want to load up on their assets, but they won't have that double-double in 32 and 33 that we thought they might have. Wolves and Leicester also have a fixture in blank Game Week 34. Of course, then someone like a Mateus Cunha looks like a really nice option for blank Game Week 34. Chelsea and Everton will also play, as will Liverpool and Spurs. So those 8 teams will play in blank Game Week 34. Then it just depends on which teams make the FA Cup semi-final and which teams are knocked out. But as of right now, going on the basis that Aston Villa make the semis, City make the semis, Brighton make the semis, and Fulham make the semis, which of course are the 4 favourite teams based on what we just looked at, that would cause blank game week for City, Villa, Brighton, West Ham, Southampton, and Fulham. Those 6 teams would not play in 34, and as a result, like I said, would double in 33, which would leave the other 6 teams to have a fixture. So it would mean that Arsenal, Palace, Bournemouth, United, Forest, and Brentford all play in blank game week 34. The reason I now say to take this all with a massive pinch of salt is, of course, if any of those fixtures change, it will change it. Let's say, for example, that Palace beat Fulham and Palace reach the semis, then all of a sudden Arsenal and Palace are the ones that blank, and Southampton and Fulham would have a fixture. Let's say that actually Nottingham Forest beat Brighton in the quarterfinals, which of course is quite possible, then Brighton and West Ham would have a fixture in 34, and it would be Forest and Brentford that would be the ones that blank. So again, we don't know exactly what this is going to look like, but this will give you a general idea. And we do now at least have 8 teams that have a confirmed fixture in 34. Hopefully that now clears up why we are talking so much about 34, is of course because we're going to have a big blank, and the teams that blank in 34 have a very good chance of doubling in 33. So now that we've covered that, let's take a look at all of the blanks and doubles for the remainder of the season and how they're going to line up and how we can best navigate that. So based on all of these predictions and projections, this is what we're kind of looking at right now in terms of the remainder of the season and the blanks and doubles that are coming up. I will just note, almost definitely, it will not turn out exactly like this because the Premier League can throw us curveballs, but also this is going on the basis that we can perfectly and accurately predict which teams will reach not only the FA Cup semi-finals, but also the FA Cup finals. And also, in the case of 36 and 37, we're starting to look at Europa League knockout stages as well. So there are lots of predictions and projections going into this that just probably won't turn out in exactly this way, but this will give us a bit of an idea about roughly what we can expect in terms of blanks and doubles for the remainder of the season. As I said at the start, this isn't my work. This is actually this bit, courtesy of Planet FPL and also FPL.team, who have combined to make a predicted set of fixtures basically for the remainder of the season. So, what do we have? We have a blank game week in Game Week 29, which we've known for a while. This is confirmed. The 4 teams that will blank in 29 are Palace, Newcastle, Liverpool, and Villa. That's nice and simple. Also, double Game Week 32, which we recently had announced as well. That's nice and simple. There are 2 teams that are doubling in 32, which is Crystal Palace and Newcastle, and that is based on the 29 blank. So their fixture from 29 has just been rescheduled for double Game Week 32. So blank Game Week 29 and double Game Week 32 are the only 2 100% confirmed blanks and doubles that we know exactly what we're going to get for, which is nice. So in terms of what you can do now, you can plan for blank Game Week 29 and double Game Week 32, which is at least a bit of information. Where it then becomes difficult, as I've just spoken about, is Game Week 33 and 34. So the blank from 34 will cause the double in 33, and based on current projections, as I've just said, that means that 6 teams will be doubling in 33, and those same 6 teams will blank in 34, which is looking like, as of right now, Villa, Brighton, Fulham, West Ham, City, and Southampton. As a result, and we will discuss chip strategy a bit later, this is why, without a free hit or wildcard around 33, 34, having a really good team for 33 and a really good team for 34 is virtually impossible without a free hit or a wildcard to use. You can bank free transfers. You could go a little bit suboptimal in 33 to allow you to do an okay job in 34. But if you want to really optimize both weeks, you kind of have to play a free hit in one of them or a wild card. So that's something to start considering. It's one of the reasons why a lot of us don't want to free hit in 29. It's not because we wouldn't get points. Like, most of us would really improve our team with a free hit in 29. But then when you get to 33, 34, if it goes the way we're expecting, it's going to be a little bit difficult to navigate. 33 and 34, or 34 and 33, I think almost definitely will be doubles and blanks. Why I've put a question mark for 36 and 37 is we could quite easily see no remaining blanks and doubles after Game Week 34. So 36 and 37 aren't confirmed doubles and blanks, but this is dependent on the FA Cup final. So, going on the basis that Villa and I believe City make the FA Cup final, we could see a blank in Game Week 37, which then causes a subsequent double in Game Week 36. However, I believe this only causes a blank, and this is where my knowledge is tested. This only causes a blank if Villa reach the FA Cup final, which they could do. They're in a good position to do so with their draw against Preston. But if Villa make the final, and I believe Spurs would have to make at least the semi-final of the Europa League for them to provisionally announce a blank in 37. That might be too complicated for most of you, and for me, it probably is, and it's too far in the distance to really care about. But what I'm essentially saying, and what I guess James from Planet FPL is essentially saying, is we could have a possible small blank in 37, which causes a possible small double in Game Week 36. So it could be something like, and again, it probably won't be, it could be something like Villa, Spurs, City and Bournemouth doubling in 36 and blanking in 37. That could be useful if you're looking to assistant manager chip at the back end of the season, or triple captain on Erling Haaland in 36. I wouldn't hold out hope just for that though, because like I said, there is a chance that the games don't go the way we think, or the Premier League do something else and it doesn't cause that blank and double. So there we go. Nice and simple, right? This is the upcoming schedule. So I guess to just recap and confirm, blank 29's the second biggest blank of the season. Blank Game Week 34 is likely to be the biggest blank, but we don't know that 100%. And the blank from 34 will cause a double in 33. There is also a possible small blank in 37, which would then cause a possible small double in 36. So we do have a lot of blanks and doubles coming up. At least 2 more blanks and 2 more doubles, potentially 3 more blanks and 3 more doubles. So lots of planning, lots of chips required. Let's move on to the next section. So moving on from that, I guess the most logical question is, well, when will we actually find out that information? I'm talking a lot about hypotheticals here. When we actually find out about the blanks and doubles, we've got to wait a little while. And sadly, we might not quite get the info when we'd want it. So what I've got here on this graphic is obviously the Game Week 29 deadline, which is Saturday the 15th of March. Then between Game Week 29 and 30, we've got over 2 weeks. So the Game Week 30 deadline isn't until Tuesday the 1st of April, because between 29 and 30, we not only have the EFL Cup final between Liverpool and Newcastle, but we also have the FA Cup quarter-final games. So what that means is between 29 and 30, because we will have the FA Cup quarter-final games, we will know the teams that will have their fixture postponed in Game Week 34. So going on the assumption that those games are actual blanks and they don't get rescheduled within 34, we will essentially know which teams blank before the Game Week 30 deadline. So you could technically, therefore, wildcard in 30 under the assumption that you can predict roughly what will happen because you know which teams have made the semis. But as I said, we don't know for sure that some of those fixtures will actually move out of 34. They could be rescheduled for within 34. We also don't know definitely 100% that they will be moved into 33. There's a very minor chance that they're rescheduled for somewhere else. So we know roughly, and we'll have a good idea, but we probably... And again, we could because we just don't know, but we probably won't know exactly when those games are rescheduled. The reason for that is the FA Cup quarter-final games are the weekend, and then the Game Week 30 deadline is Tuesday. It's very unlikely that after the FA Cup games, before the Tuesday deadline, the Premier League make an announcement about where these fixtures go. So we're probably not going to know by the 30 deadline exactly what the landscape looks like. However, we think and again, it's only a think, but we think we will know by the Game Week 31 deadline whether it is a double Game Week 33, which teams go there are already rescheduled for within 34, and we should therefore know before the 31 deadline exactly what 33 and 34 look like. I would put that, just going to throw a random percentage, I'd put that like a 90% likelihood that we'll know by the 31 deadline, and there is a 10% chance that we won't know that until after the 31 deadline. What this therefore means... what a video, by the way. What this therefore means is that a wildcard in Game Week 31 is probably the best week to aim for as things stand. If by the 30 deadline, let's say on Monday, just before the Game Week 30 deadline, let's say they do just go out there and they're really ahead of everything and they give us exactly when all of these games will be rescheduled, great. Then we can wildcard in Game Week 30. But I wouldn't plan for that right now. I would plan for a Game Week 31 wildcard. The other reason why I think a Game Week 31 wildcard makes sense is most of the teams that have a good fixture in 29 also have a good fixture in Game Week 30. Nottingham Forest have Ipswich in 29 and they play Manchester United, who have been awful recently, in Game Week 30. Bournemouth, for example, have Brentford at home in 29 and then they play against Ipswich in Game Week 30. So even Man City, they play Brighton and they play Leicester. So pretty much all of the teams that you're likely to load up on for Game Week 29 also have a really good fixture in 30. So even if we got the information in Game Week 30, most of your teams probably don't need a wildcard in that week anyway. So yeah, basically between 29 and 30, we'll get a much better idea, but probably not the full picture. Between 30 and 31, we should hopefully get the full picture. And therefore, as things stand right now, if you're really unsure when to play your wildcard, I would tentatively pencil in a Game Week 31 wildcard. So we then move on to the main purpose of this, which is to discuss a bit of chip strategy. When should you be playing your chips? I just spoke about why I think wildcard 31 is the most obvious time to wildcard for most teams, but not all teams, which is what strategy 1 and 2 are. They are based upon the assumption that you wildcard in 31. And then strategy 3 and 4 are based on a later wildcard. And also you can see strategy 3 is what I would probably be looking at if you're free hitting in 29. So we will talk through all of these. I will just note, if you're really unsure, and maybe I've lost you at various points through this video, or you're just looking at your team, you're like, I really don't know, and maybe after watching this section, you're still not sure, I would just use no chips until Game Week 31. If you can get through 29 with a -4, -8, even maybe a -12, save the free hit, don't wildcard in 30. As I said, I don't think I like the Game Week 30 wildcard at all. Get to 31, and then decide. You're in a great spot, because maybe you say, actually, I still don't need a wildcard in 31. Great, going for like something like strategy 4. Where you bench boost free hit and then wildcard later. I can't see many reasons, other than your team looks horrific for Game Week 29, why saving chips and just waiting until Game Week 31 isn't a fine idea to do. So I'm probably doing that myself. I'm probably looking at not using a chip until Game Week 31. So I think strategy 1 was my favourite strategy before the FA Cup 5th round results, and I'll explain why it's not as of right now, but it's sort of the most basic, safe, logical setup in terms of the chips. And I will just note, I know there's no triple captain and assistant manager here. I'll explain that in the next couple of sections. This is just the base chips of wildcard bench boost free hit. So strategy 1 would be, again, you wildcard in 31 to set up for the double in 32, the probable double in 33, and then obviously you might need to use your free hit to deal with Game Week 34. So yeah, wildcard in 31, bench boost in the biggest double game week of the season, which is a nice time to bench boost as always. There are some good teams that are going to have probably cheap assets to put on your bench boost. You can arguably maybe get 14 or 15 doublers that week. and then you free hit in 34, because remember, the teams that you load up on for 33 are going to be the teams that blank in 34. So bench boost 33, free hit 34 does make a lot of sense. So that is strategy 1. That was my strategy. So why isn't that now my strategy? It basically comes down to Newcastle and Palace. So now, Newcastle double in 32, but do not double in 33, and instead have a fixture in 34. So Newcastle double in 32 and play in the blank game week. If Fulham beat Palace, Palace will also double in 32 and have a fixture in blank game week 34. So what we could be looking like, again, this is if Fulham beat Palace, we could be looking like the teams that we are going to have probably 6 assets from in Crystal Palace and Newcastle for the double in 32 are going to also have a fixture in the blank in 34. So in that case, I've already got confirmed 6 players for the blank in 34, plus I'm almost definitely going to have at least 3, 4, 5 other players that have a fixture in 34. I don't really need to play my free hit in 34, assuming that I load up on Newcastle and Palace for 32, which I'm probably going to want to do. So, if that is the situation, that Newcastle and Palace, again, do have a fixture in the blank, and they double in 32, then what I probably am going to struggle more with is actually double game week 33, because Palace and Newcastle won't double in that week. So I've immediately got 6 players there that don't double in the biggest double of the season. So in that case, what you would then do is probably free hit in 33. So what that would look like is, again, 6 players from Newcastle and Palace ready for a bench boost in 32. So it would be kind of like a single game week bench boost. But you'd have your 6 players from those 2 teams. Bench boost in 32, which I've had a look at, by the way. It's a pretty decent bench boost, depending on who you pick on your wildcard in 31. And then you would free hit in 33 to get 11 doublers and have a really strong team for the double game week. And then you would be absolutely fine and perfectly set up for the blank game week 34. And then for 35 to 38, you'd probably have to use some transfers, maybe take a couple of hits to make sure that you finish the season strong. I really like this strategy now, but it is on the basis that Fulham beat Palace in the Cup. Because if Palace beat Fulham in the Cup, then Palace will double in 33 and they will blank in 34, probably. Which then makes it a little bit more difficult, because you'll have the Newcastle players that don't double, but also have a fixture, but you'll have the Palace players that do double and then don't have a fixture. That will be then a little bit more complicated. I've probably lost about 90% of people at this stage, but basically, I am probably almost definitely going to wildcard in 31, and then based on what happens between Palace and Fulham, I will decide whether I free hit in 33 or free hit in 34, and that will determine whether I bench boost in 33 or 32. Hopefully that makes sense, but I think strategy 1 and strategy 2 are currently what I'm choosing between for my personal team and my personal chip strategy. Again, I don't have triple captain or assistant manager, so we'll discuss how that might impact your strategy in the next section. Strategy 3 is if you need to free hit. And again, I would only use the free hit if you really need it. Your team is an absolute state, because I just think it's much better used around 33, 34. But if you free hit in 29, you shouldn't need a wildcard in 31, because the very reason that you should probably be free hitting in 29 is because you own Palace players and probably because you own Newcastle players, along with maybe some Liverpool. But that would be the reason that you would free hit, is because you have the players that are blanking, which means you are set up well for 32 anyway. If you've already got 3 or 4 players from Newcastle and Palace combined, then that's probably the reason that you're looking to free hit. So you should be able to put together a really good team for double game week 32, and maybe 33 as well with a couple of transfers. So the idea would be that you free hit, don't early wildcard, bench boost in 32 or 33, and then you can wildcard out of that around either blank game week 34 or game week 35. The reason I've put 34, despite it being a blank game week, you might need to wildcard in 34 because your team might be a bit of a state for that blank. So you might, rather than using a free hit in the blank, you're almost wildcarding into it to allow yourself to set up not only for the blank, but for the remainder of the season as well. Strategy 4 is a little bit more of a rogue one. It's basically the same as strategy 2, but you just don't feel like you need a wildcard in 31. Maybe your team is really well set up. You've got 5 free transfers. You still want to bench boost 32, free hit 33, but you just save your wildcard for a little bit after that. And then I don't mind that at all. So there we go. That's that. There, by the way, there are more than 4 strategies. There are about 15. You could, by the way, wildcard in 29. I don't mind a wildcard in 29 at all for some people. and you've got assistant manager and triple captain, which you might need to fit in as well. But these are largely the strategies I'd be going off. I think for most people, 1 and 2 are roughly what you're probably choosing between, but we need to see what happens in the FA Cup quarterfinals. Let me know if any of these resonate with you. Let me know if you're playing a similar chip strategy yourself. Let's discuss a bit of assistant manager, triple captain, and some of your other questions as well. So where does the assistant manager fit in? I'll be honest, it doesn't fit in particularly well because we've got so many blanks and doubles, but there are weeks where you want to play your free hit. There's weeks where you want to play your bench boost, your wild card. And the issue with the assistant manager chip is it's active for 3 weeks. So you are blocking out 3 weeks where you can't play your other chips. So if the other chips didn't exist and the only chip you had in FPL was the assistant manager, option 1 would be the favoured one. So by the way, this graphic is from FPL.team again, courtesy of the projections from James from Planet FPL. So this is what the fixtures would look like if they are exactly as projected. And of course, this could change. But yeah, game week 31 to 33 would be perfect. You've got a double in 32, in which case you'd probably go for Oliver Glasner. And then you've got a double in 33 as well. So you would be getting 5 fixtures rather than just 3 fixtures. You'd be getting 2 double game weeks. And there are lots of pretty decent, we think anyway, but we don't know what the table will look like, some pretty decent table bonus opportunities in there. So yeah, in an ideal world, 31 to 33 is perfect. I have just shown you, though, in the previous section, that my current plan is wildcard 31, bench boost 32, free hit 33. I am planning on playing a chip in every week from 31 to 33, and I think that's a decent strategy. You therefore can't play the assistant manager, or you are telling me that in the weeks where I am, in my opinion, playing a really good chip strategy with 3 chips in a row, you're not going to have any of those chips active and you're just going to be playing the assistant manager, which is, by the way, a very powerful chip. So that doesn't feel great. Where are you wildcarding? You're going to wildcard in 30 maybe? But if you wildcard in 30, you might have all of the information. Do you maybe shift the assistant manager from 32 to 34? So you wildcard in 31 and just shift it a week. That could work. Where are you free hitting? How are you dealing with 33 and 34 without a free hit or a wild card? You can't use either of them because you've got the assistant manager chip active. So as a result, I actually don't love option 1 because I think it blocks you from playing other really powerful chips in that time. Another option that's not on here is you could just play it now, 28, 29, 30. Nothing really happening in these 3 weeks. You're probably not free hitting most people in 29 anyway. So you've got 3 weeks, no doubles, but you've got 3 weeks where it's not blocking you from playing other chips. You could play it in that sort of middle section, 33, 34, 35, but I don't see a real good reason to do that. And again, you are blocking probably the use of a free hit or wildcard. So I think my favoured option, and really, I think unless you've just already used your free hit and wildcard, the only real option I can see here is probably 36, 37, 38. We've got a possible double in 36, but like I said, this is absolutely not confirmed. But a possible double where you could play it, I don't know, on someone like Ange. You've got Crystal Palace and Aston Villa. You might get a table bonus game there. You could play it maybe on Man City. If Man City do get a double of Southampton and Bournemouth, you won't get a table bonus for either of those games, but Southampton would hopefully feel like a bit of a banker fixture. You'd probably need to transfer the manager out for 37 and 38. The other reason that I like 36, 37, 38, though, let's say we don't even get a double game week and it's just 3 single weeks. You will know going into game week 36 how far off or how far into your target rank or your position in your mini league you are. If you are first in your mini league and let's say 25 points clear, you probably play it safe. Go like Pep, and then maybe in game week 38, play it on, I don't know, Iraola against Leicester or Arteta against Southampton. You play it on someone a little bit safe and just make sure you keep your lead. However, if you're like 40 points off top 50k and that's been your target all season, you probably go all out and chase table bonus for all 3 games. I just feel like going into 36, 37, 38, 3 weeks left of the season, you will know exactly how risky you need to be. Whereas earlier in the season, I didn't know. I was like, do I want to chase the table bonus for Glasner? I'm not too displeased with my rank. Do I want to risk it? You will know whether you need to take that risk. So to recap that, I think 31 to 33 in an ideal world is the best time to play it, but I just think it will block you from the other chips you want to play, which probably leaves you with 36 to 38. Hopefully that's helpful. And yeah, I think probably the real winners, sad to say, is probably those that have already played it, because now they can just freely play their other chips. They don't have to worry too much. But there could definitely be some upside later this season. So just to cover some of your other questions that you guys have asked, and please feel free to ask more questions in the comments. And by the way, if you've enjoyed this video and you've got to this point and some of this has made sense and I've not made an array of errors, please do consider subscribing. I'm trying to hit 150,000 subscribers by the end of the season. So if you're not yet subscribed and you've enjoyed this video, please do subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. So the first question was, well, when do we play the triple captain chip? It kind of depends when you're playing the other chips. And I would say that the triple captain chip is probably arguably the worst chip in FPL. I mean, you could get a big score. We saw Salah, was it 29 points, the triple captain in 24? He can go really, really big, Mohamed Salah, and even like an Erling Haaland in Gameweek 36 could be massive. But what you don't want to do is block yourself from a really valuable chip. Like, I wouldn't play the triple captain in 33 if you'd rather play the bench boost or the free hit in that week. I think you've basically got three options for me, because I think a lot of people will either bench boost or free hit in Gameweek 33. I've kind of ruled out Gameweek 33 because I think it will be a popular week to play one of the more powerful chips. I think you've either got Gameweek 32, playing it on Isak, who's going to have a double game week and both games are at home. I think it's United and Crystal Palace at home. So that's an option. Game week 36, if potentially, and it's a small possibility, but if City were to double, there is the chance that you could play it on someone like Erling Haaland, but you could wait for that opportunity that might never arise. Or you just play it in a single game. It's like a single game week. We saw it worked quite well with Haaland in game week 2 against Ipswich. Salah's got Southampton this week. The only concern with Salah, and we'll discuss this more throughout the week, it's sandwiched between the two PSG games. So how many minutes will Salah actually get in game week 28 against Southampton? Might he get an early sub? So maybe not the best time, but I guess, like I'm saying, it's another opportunity to just basically play it in a single game week. It's not ideal. I would just say make sure it doesn't clash with the bench boost and free hit. And I would prefer to optimize those chips ahead of the triple captain. Another question is, does a wildcard in game week 28 or 29 work? If so, how would you structure it? Not particularly well, I'll be honest. I know a lot of people have played it this week. I'm not saying it's bad. And 29, like I said, is a possibility. I would attack what's in front of you, but keep an eye on, like, we already know 8 teams that are going to play in 34. Maybe make sure that you've got some players from those teams. Look at which teams are most likely to blank then as well. Also, think about Game Week 32. What we know in front of us is that Crystal Palace and Newcastle will have a double in 32. Try and have at least maybe 3 of those assets on your bench for blank Game Week 29. And the final thing is, just get ready to take hits. If you're wildcarding now, you are going to have to take hits. I mean, most of us probably will anyway, but things will change, things will happen. I wouldn't wildcard now if you're someone that's scared of hits, because being scared of hits can be dangerous. It can actually be detrimental if you're afraid to take a hit, because you're just going to play a suboptimal team each week. Sometimes it's worth taking that -4, that -8, that -12 to make sure that you've got a good team for the upcoming fixture run. So, yeah, I would basically go back through and watch this video twice and just plan ahead, like work out, right, if I build this team now, is it lacking in 30? Is it lacking in 32? Is it lacking in 33? How will it look for the blank? And that's the best you can do at this stage. I can't really offer too much more advice. So no, I wouldn't wildcard now if you can help it. But if your team is a genuine state and there's nothing you can do, you've got loads of injury suspensions, then you could absolutely pull the trigger. It's kind of, I guess, a similar question is what to do if you have no remaining free hit and no remaining wildcards. So some people have used both of their chips. Is it possible to navigate? Not particularly well. You're going to have to sacrifice and you're going to have to take hits. So I guess pick your battles. Don't go all in on double game week 33 when you know full well it'll probably mean that you can't deal with blank game week 34. So I wouldn't try and... I don't think you want to be too tentative and like tread on eggshells through the remainder of the season, but you need to think ahead. You need to be planning... At this stage, you need to be planning like expertly well to navigate the remainder of the season well without a free hit and wildcard. That's the truth of it. But go back through again, work out which teams are playing in each week. And once we get more information, it'll become a little bit easier to work out where you prioritize your transfers. But definitely don't be using luxury transfers. If you've got a player that plays in a blank, you don't remove them. If you've got a player that doubles but they're not great, you keep them, right? You really prioritize your transfers on making those big changes to your squad. Next question was, if you have to bench boost or triple captain in a single game week, which would you prefer to sacrifice? I think the triple captain's slightly weaker than the bench boost overall. However, I think the bench boost can be one of the most detrimental chips to your season. Like, because a lot of people wildcard specifically to set up a bench boost. Lots of people will take hits to try and put a good bench boost together. Lots of people focus their transfers there. And sometimes they just 3 of your 4 players blank in both games, even if it's a double game week. So with the triple captain, at least you just play it on your best captain that week. With your bench boost, it can really ruin your season. So I guess what I'm saying here is, in isolation, I would prefer a triple captain in a single game week. But if you stumble across a bench boost in a single game week where you're like, I like all 4 of my players, they're definitely going to play, I'd just let the bench boost rip, in all honesty. And when I'm saying I'm going to use it in game week 32, it's basically going to be a single game week. Because the only 2 teams that double in 32 are Palace and Newcastle. You can own a maximum of 6 from those 2. Well, then basically my bench is going to be single game week players. So Yeah, I don't mind either of them, to be honest. And I think most people probably will end up playing one of the two in a single game week. The final question is, what is the best strategy if you have every chip remaining? This is actually a lot more difficult than one would think. You've basically got to sacrifice the triple captain or the assistant manager. I think because the triple captain is a weaker chip overall normally, I would play the triple captain in a single game week somewhere. It doesn't have to be 28. I've just put that there for now. And then I would follow a similar strategy to what I said. I'd wildcard in 31 still. I'd bench boost in 32 or 33. And I'd free hit in 33 or 34, depending on which way the FA Cup quarter-final results fall. And then I would assistant manager from 36 to 38. If you're in that position, it's great. And again, this means, therefore, obviously, if you don't have the triple captain, I would just do the remaining part of that chip strategy. If you have the triple captain, but not the assistant manager, again, you could be looking at something like triple captain 36, or put your triple captain in 32, bench boost 33, free hit 34. So it'd be wildcard 31, triple captain 32, bench boost 33, free hit 34. There's lots of options here. I really don't mind any number of strategies if you feel like it puts your team in a good position for the blanks and doubles. If any of this is wrong, please let me know in the comments. I've done my best to get this all as accurate as possible. I'll be watching and listening to James from Planet FPL do his podcast as well. But if there is anything incorrect where I've misspoken, I do apologise. Let me know. If I have got anything wrong, I'll pin a comment to correct it. But yeah, hopefully that's been helpful and hopefully giving you a bit more. You might have to watch this more than once, but giving you a bit more information around the blanks and doubles. So guys, there you have it. That is a pretty long video around the blanks, doubles, chips, and much, much more there. Hopefully that has been helpful for you. There is a lot of information, and I will just note this is the most difficult season I've ever known in terms of trying to work out when the blanks and doubles will be, and they're not particularly good blanks or doubles either. So it has been a little bit more difficult than usual. But yeah, if you have got any use out of today's video and you're still watching at this point, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. There'll be some more normal videos throughout the week coming up, including my team selection, deadline decisions, and of course a deadline stream as well. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.